Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be with you all here today. Thank you for coming to our Gotan-e service, which is the service to celebrate the birth of our founder, Master Shinran Shonin. Today, we are honored and privileged to have a special guest speaker for this wonderful occasion. He is a close personal friend of mine from the South Bay area. So how many of you know where, in California, where Los Altos is? Well, okay, I hope you know. But that's good, a lot of you, okay. So Reverend Landon Yamaoka was born in Los Altos, California. And he grew up going to the Palo Alto Buddhist temple. How many of you know where Palo Alto is? Very good, okay. For those of you who do not know, how many of you have heard of Stanford University? Good. So that's where Palo Alto, that's where Stanford University is in the city of Palo Alto. So Reverend Yamaoka grew up going to the Palo Alto Buddhist temple. I often hear him telling very humorous stories about Reverend Abiko going there, but now he went. The minister who was serving at Palo Alto is a person you may also remember, Reverend Dean Koyama, my uncle. But Reverend Yamaoka, was, I don't want to say pressured into the path, but was kind of pressured into the path of ministry. Even I think like from college age, right? People were telling you that you should become a minister, going to college. And believe it or not, the person who was saying most of this to him was Reverend Dr. Sagan Yamaoka. Do you all, for those of you who are, a little more seasoned at the temple, do you remember Reverend Yamaoka? He was the bishop of the Buddhist Churches of America. Now I know what you're thinking, but right now, as far as we know, there is no immediate family relation between Reverend Landon Yamaoka and Reverend Dr. Sagan Yamaoka. But it is possible, since both of their families came from the prefecture of Wakayama in Japan. How many of you know where Wakayama is? Okay, so some of you have heard of it. Okay, so Reverend Yamaoka also worked as a social worker and served as a social worker for 7 years as a caseworker. So Reverend Yamaoka actually has a plethora of experience of working with many people with various needs, and has always had the ability to really touch the human side of all of us. Yesterday, Reverend Yamaoka gave an incredible seminar talk, and I certainly hope we can invite him here again. But on a personal note, Reverend Yamaoka and I go way back to a degree, because I met him when we first went to Techno-Buddha, when I first went to Techno-Buddha over 10 years ago. This was before either of us were ministers, and it was also during the time when we started thinking about going into the ministry seriously. So I did go to the Institute of Buddhist Studies first, but Reverend Yamaoka followed in terms of going into the Institute of Buddhist Studies 1 semester after me. So Reverend Yamaoka was able to experience a lot of classes and a lot of study sessions and a lot of personal time with me. And I'm certain he will tell you how joyous and easy and how easy to put up with I was, and how much I helped him, and how much how much we got along together. But Reverend Yamaoka is by far one of the most generous and one of the most generous and really touching people, I think, that I've ever met. So it is with great privilege that I welcome him here today. And please join me in welcoming my dear friend, Reverend Landon Yamaoka. Good morning. Microphone? Oh, okay.
If you could please join me in Gashko. Oh, do I need the lapel mic? Okay, could you please join me in Gashko? Okay. Good morning. So I'd like to thank all of you for allowing me to come up here to speak with you for your Gotan-e service, and also for inviting me to do a lecture yesterday. My wife's here, but not like physically in the room right now. I think she might be slowly sleeping. But she did go to Japanese Shonin service on Thursday, so I think that counts for her one church thing for our vacation. So I tend to go way over time-wise, and my wife will stand up and do the no more. I usually miss it. So this talk is going to be short, unless I start riffing. I wish she was here right now, but I think my good friend Koyama-sensei will stop me if I go over. I can go on forever, and I don't deny this, but when I was a child or a youth in Dharma school, I kind of thought, well, if I'm going to give a kid talk, like, what was I learning back then as a Sunday school student who didn't really want to be in the church at that time? Abiko-sensei didn't teach me a lot about Jodo Shinshu, but he did use the past lives of Siddhartha Gautama and how each life was a part of his process to be reborn down the line as the Buddha, someone who would become enlightened. So that kind of just a little bit started my interest in Buddhism, but only really because I had to be there, and I wasn't allowed to fall asleep during service. I wish that maybe I had heard a little bit more about Jodo Shinshu. I don't know if I would have cared or appreciated it, but as an adult, I mean, I'm not young, but I don't feel like I'm a real adult yet. I think there is something to learn about Jodo Shinshu. But again, it's hard for adults to understand, so I feel like it would be even harder for children to understand, so I'm going to give a simplified version of Buddhism. But I'd like to ask, are all the Dharma school, right? Well, we're spread out, so I'd like to ask the Dharma school students, you don't have to answer, but maybe in your head, if you're not listening to the service, that's okay. Just reflect on what it is that you think Buddhism can do or does for you in your daily life. Or does it do anything? Does it help you? So a couple months ago, some of our friends, Reverend Koyama and my friends, Reverend Blake and Professor Thomas Calabrese, were having a discussion after dinner about what does all Buddhism have in common. So we had two ministers and a person with a master's from IBS and then a PhD from the overhead kind of Christian school, and he focused his PhD at IBS. We didn't agree. We couldn't agree. We had different opinions. Each of us had kind of our own personal spin on what does everything have to do with Buddhism that's in common, and then what does it mean for us. I hope, because we're all here, I assume that we agree that Buddhism can help us better look at ourselves, and I think all the Buddhist religions do that, and I think all religions also ask for each individual person to look inward. We want to get to know ourselves just a little bit better. So, has anyone heard the term emotional awareness? Okay. So I think Buddhism helps people work on this kind of idea if they're willing to learn something from Buddhism. I think Buddhism helps us understand the world just a little bit better. Perhaps you've heard things like things are impermanent, things are interconnected, and sometimes life won't always be perfect. We've all heard that to some extent, right? I think if we really listen to the Buddhist teachings, those things become not just a theory, but something that we can actually take in and live our lives to feel something, but also to know ourselves a little bit better and how we react to certain things. So to go back to this, I hear my wife all the time, but all my friends too say, oh yeah, Landon talks a lot. Buddhism kind of helped me understand this. Sometimes, a lot of the times, I don't know when I'm talking too much. For this talk, I was supposed to check the time, but I don't remember what time we started at, so I forgot. Because I get nervous, public speaking's hard. or I forget to even check. My friends, my wife, my parents sometimes get upset at me, but like, that's also okay. It's okay if they get upset. Buddhism helped me years and years of coming to the temple and coming back as an adult, helped me kind of understand myself and this about myself a little bit more. If you had told me in high school or in college that I talked too much, I would not have been very nice to you. I would have gotten angry. Not because it wasn't true, but because that version of Landon wouldn't want to hear that. I wouldn't want to believe it. So if you've never heard of emotional awareness, it's an understanding of that we do feel something, but then we have to acknowledge it instead of denying it or like trying to push it away. I think for Buddhism, if we can pay attention, it helps us accept things as they are. So that does not mean, to the Dharma School children, you don't have to like everything that happens in your life. Like you won't, that's just part of life. But I think through Buddhism, if we can pay attention, it does help us accept that maybe this is just the way things are. If we're honest with ourselves about our feelings, perhaps that'll stop us from going too far in and getting angry at someone else. I'm sure all the youth in here have heard at least once, or maybe once, twice in your life, things from adults that you did not want to hear. Is that a safe thing? I'm sure the adults can agree with that too. But if you hear something you don't like and you get angry and you say or do something to the person that said that to you or did something to you, you might hurt someone's feelings and perhaps that person deserved it. I'm not saying we should just yell at people, but sometimes when we're upset, we take it out on the wrong person. I think maybe Buddhism, at least for me, helps me kind of notice when I'm about to react in an unacceptable way in society, and then maybe rethink, is this what I really want to say or do? Like an example, like when my wife tells me that I'm too loud and I talk too much, ironically, I get very upset when she's very loud and talks too much. And I personally think that she does it more than me. She's not here to defend herself. She wouldn't agree. But Buddhism, in all seriousness, kind of helped me better navigate this. So I used to get mad at her. I do get annoyed still, but I would never say that out loud because if you're in a relationship with someone, you know some things are better left just, we don't need to bring it up. But in our relationship, I think Buddhism has kind of made me stop and pull back and consider her situation first. So my wife works in the medical field. Ironically, in the pandemic, I found out I was like very unhealthy. And so I actually use her office and their team for a lot of my medical needs. She spends every day in the medical field taking care of people to make sure that they can afford to get their medicine and services. So she's working with insurance and she has to learn the tricks when insurance says, no, sorry, we don't cover that person. She finds the ins and outs to make sure that person gets what they need. So she's taking care of really, I mean, I'm not healthy, but these people are like considerably worse off than I am. I think emotional awareness lets me feel what I am feeling versus suppressing it. And obviously I suppress things all the time, but you know, it's not healthy to do that. Sometimes Buddhism helps me think about something in a new way before I react poorly. And I know this sounds weird, but maybe for the Dharma School students, parents, adults too, if you feel like doing this, give it a try. If you feel yourself feeling upset, instead of fighting it and maybe saying something mean to someone that would get you in trouble or cause like issues, if you just trust the person that you're having an issue with, because they're close to you, just say, hey, I'm not feeling too good right now. Could I please could I have a moment to be alone? Not you give me a minute to be alone. Can I please have a minute to be alone? Then you're taking the responsibility. Try taking 3 breaths before you act or say something. And if you still react the way you need to react, you know, it's the real world. Sometimes you have to do what you have to do. But see if 3 breaths helps. It won't always work. Actually, maybe most of the time it probably won't work. But we're Buddhists, right? So I think we should at least be able to be asked to try to understand our feelings, because perhaps one day, one time, you might not do or say something that gets you into a lot of trouble. And if that day does come and you have the emotional awareness like, oh yeah, we're practicing Buddhism. After the 3 breaths and the thing is over, inside your head, say it out loud, then say the Nembutsu, because that's getting us closer to what Master Shinran was asking us to do. Perhaps that one small moment, you might find some inner peace and help prevent a worse situation for yourself and those around you. I don't know how long that was. Was that like about 5 minutes? A little bit too long. Okay, sorry about that. I apologize. I don't know. I need my life. Can you please join me in Ashro? Namo Notsu. Namo Notsu. Namo Notsu. Namo Notsu. Namo Notsu. Namo Notsu. Thank you. If you could please join me in Ashro. I can make bits of rubble change into gold. No, Notsu. No, Notsu. No, Notsu. No, Good morning again. Thank you for joining us for our Gotan-e service sign-up. This is like the second time I've said that. And I believe it's Shinran's 852nd birthday. But if I did the math wrong, can someone correct me? No? Okay, nice. So he was born on May 21st, 1173. I'm dyslexic, so like numbers has always been an enemy of mine, I guess. But I'd like to also thank your board and all of you for welcoming me to come back to the temple. I know I've been here before, but for the first time to speak. And just to join in your celebration today and being allowed to do my lecture yesterday. So if you haven't heard this quote, or Gosandai, it's referenced by Shinran Shonin in regards to like 2 different Buddhist masters' works. So the contents of these quotes are found on page 456 in Notes on Essentials of Faith Alone, and in the Essentials of Faith Alone on 688 in the Collected Works of Shinran. Does anyone have the Collected Works of Shinran? Oh, a couple of us. Okay, that's actually pretty good. So if you want to go back, it's 456 and 688. That was a surprise. I was not prepared for certain people besides Eric. Sorry, Koyama Sensei, Eric to raise their hands. So Master Shinran is showing some of our Buddhist masters' ideas on the importance of taking refuge in the Amita's primal vow. So in the story, when creating the vows for Buddhahood, Bodhisattva Dharmakara, and if you haven't heard of that name, this is the person that becomes Amida Buddha, at the fulfillment of their 48 vows states, "When beings hear my name and think on me, I will come to welcome each of them, not discriminating at all between the poor and the rich and the lowborn, not discriminating between the inferior and highly gifted, not choosing the learned and those upholding pure precepts, nor rejecting those who break precepts and whose evil karma is profound. Solely making beings turn about and abundantly say the Nembutsu, I can make bits of rubble change into gold." So first, I'm going to congratulate myself, which might seem weird, but the Notes on Essentials of Faith Alone was my first like academic doctrinal book that I'd ever read in Jodo Shinshu's plethora of books. I probably read about a dozen books written by Jodo Shinshu ministers, but it was like their personal accounts, like stories and their ideas and interactions. So it was a little bit easier to read that kind of stuff. And I asked my friend, well, there's a story about it, so I'll just read the story. So I was with Masuda Sensei, who was the minister of Palo Alto after Biko Sensei, and it was some sort of like discussion group or something. And my friend, Hamasaki Sensei, who had given me that book, because I said, I want to challenge myself. I think I'm ready to go to the next level. I wasn't. But in the discussion, something about the book came up, so I was like, oh, hey, I'm reading that book. I read each page 3, 4, 5 times, and I don't really get it, but I'm trying to, challenge myself. And Masuda Sensei, who's obviously the senior minister, pulled aside the younger one, Hamasaki Sensei, and this is not like outside in the parking lot or like in an office. This is just in the hallway where all the other people are still inside the classroom, and he starts screaming at my friend Matt. Why would you give him that book? It's way too advanced for him. You need to go over page by page on the phone until you finish reading the book with him. Landon could have given up and left Jodo Shinshu. You need to apologize to Landon right now. So, that's a little scary, to be caught in the middle of all this. I will admit I am not the most academic in our peer group, from people from Institute of Buddhist Studies and the ministerial aspiration groups. I think I'm okay. I'm not as lost today as I was in my early years at IBS. Perhaps if you ask Koyama Sensei, he may feel that I'm not as proficient as I'm supposed to be, but not all of us could be like expert ritual specialists. He might scold me later, but that's okay, I'm used to it. But hopefully today, in all jokes aside, we can maybe hear about how I think there's a possible new way to hear about how Jodo Shinshu, again, the religion that Shinran Shonin helped to create, can teach us about our understandings of this specific type of Buddhism as we're celebrating his birthday. So the first time I ever heard this quote was in class at the Institute of Buddhist Studies. It originally made me think of alchemy. I think we know what alchemy is, right? You can change something into something else. Master Shinran referenced these Buddhist scholars' writings on the importance of Amida Buddha's 18th or primal vow, as I believe it is transformative power for all beings across the board, no matter what. We're taught that in school. The story of Dharmakata Bodhisattva, if you haven't heard this, does everyone know who this is? Do I even need to talk about this today? Yes, we will talk about it then. Who is a person who wanted to become a Buddha, so he creates 48 vows, and in completion, he becomes Amida Buddha. Now, this has already happened in the past, so it's already taken place. If you don't know what bodhisattvas are, these are beings or people who are almost at the stage of becoming a Buddha or enlightened being. And like we're playing down some stuff here. But today's quote takes place as Dharmakata Bodhisattva started to state the vows. When beings hear my name and think of me, I will come to welcome each of them. So we might be familiar with saying the Nemutsu or Namo Amida Butsu. We've probably heard that we say this name in reverence perhaps or gratitude, and it's because we're all welcomed into the Pure Land as we are. The rest of the stanzas in the quote discuss why the vow is so powerful, because it doesn't reject people no matter their ability. So to go back to this, differences in inability, education, having good or karmic evil don't matter here. No matter who we are, me, all of you, we are all included in this vow for liberation or enlightenment. So the quote is important because all of us are the rebel. But I can't tell you specifically that each one of you is rebel, but I can say that I know I'm supposed to be represented by the rebel. But because of that, Amida Buddha's universal vow will bring me, but also all of you, to the Pure Land. So going over the explanation of this kind of brings up the idea of there's this description or idea of not doing the right thing in regards to some forms of Buddhist practices. The hard Buddhist practices didn't work for Shinran Shonin. And I think that's why when we read his writings, there's a feeling or an air of something being prolific, because at the time when he lived in Japan, most people in Japan were considered in the lesser than human categories. It was believed back then that most people were too evil or too full of negative karma to even really practice Buddhism. So it's prolific for someone at the time to go to all people and say, bits of rubble can change to gold. And this is again explained in the book that I didn't understand early on in my coming back to Jodo Shinshu, Notes on Essentials of Faith Alone. It states the people, they, the rebel, they are called low. Such peddlers, hunters, and others are none other than we, who are like stones and tiles and pebbles. So basically all the end part, the rocks, is the rubble in the quote. I recognize that I'm supposed to be understanding that I'm being referred to as the low, definitely not the gold. But I do believe, I hope, that I'm on this path of transformation that we talk about in Jodo Shinshu. And if you're new to Jodo Shinshu, to be clear, in this religion, we're not the ones doing the transformation. It's not that I'm doing anything good or becoming good on my own accord. It's the teachings are showing me a better path. And I know that's really difficult to understand. Maybe in the modernist take, so like you're saying there's this Amida Buddha out there in the universe or some energy, and it's just this being or this energy is sending compassion that's supposed to be transforming all of us imperfect people into rubble, and then we'll become enlightened or become gold. Might be hard to swallow. That was hard for me to understand. And even when I started kind of grasping at the concept of it, what was even harder for me, and I struggled with this a lot, and I definitely went to some dark places, is I couldn't accept that the I, Landon, was supposed to be worthy of this gift. In theory, it sounds nice, but in the real world, like, I'm a realist, I don't know if that's really how this is supposed to play out. And I had to ask ministers, why don't I understand this? There's people like Hamasaki Sensei who gave me that book. He would come from IBS and sit in my apartment, and we would drink, we would drink whiskey. I would have said adult sodas, but the kids are gone, and smoke cigars. And I would teach him what I've learned in working in drug rehab, working in drug prevention services, and like doing social work and mental health. How do you assess your members? Not to like point blame or categorize them, but just in the back of your mind, maybe you can learn to see things that they're doing, and that helps you understand how to change the way you present Jodo Shinshu to each individual person. In a Dharma talk, it's harder to do. So I was struggling, I wasn't in a good place, and Reverend Hamasaki told me this quote that I'd never heard before. This was like probably like 15 years ago. And so he said, have you heard the quote, the more the ice, the more the water? Has anyone heard that? Some of us have. No, and okay, so basically the ice, I don't like to say it, but it's like bad. It's the bad karma that I know that I have. But because of Buddhist compassion is being directed at me, my ice is supposed to slowly melt into water, or enlightenment, it's a metaphor. And then perhaps, hopefully, the point would be that I would have a deeper appreciation for Jodo Shinshu teachings. And of course, this transformation is happening within me, but it's not me doing the work, and it's also very, very slow and kind of hard to know if and when it's happening. Another person, Kohara Sensei, was telling me about the Akunin, or the evil person. I've heard it been translated as a person who does evil karmic acts, not inherent evil, if that's something that people are concerned about, but the person who does negative karma is the object of a Mita Buddhist vow. So where I struggled was, well, if I go to church, I can make myself be good. This is like 20, 15 years ago. And I just keep on going to church, and I'll hear the Buddhist teachings that I can be good. I'll make myself be good. I didn't understand Jodo Shinshu really at the time. I've learned to try to have some compassion for myself, to allow the teachings and Buddhist compassion to just slowly influence me. And at some point, I started to feel something change, and that's how I kind of was like, okay, maybe I can buy into this religion. I have a lot of faults. I cannot be perfect. If you saw me in my high school or college years, you would probably not want me up here speaking to you as an adult and as a minister. If perhaps you're suspicious of this idea of the quote, I can make bits of rubble turn into gold, I think that's okay. You should question the teachings. I'd like to point out that I was very lucky to have been around enough ministers and people that were willing to take the time to nurture me, to kind of guide and gently push me to just give the teachings another chance. Something, I don't know what it was, urged me to just, hey, keep showing up and coming back. I would take my grandfather's books after he passed. These are the books that I read trying to learn like the orthodoxy. And I would, go through his bookshelf, I'm like, how come he has all these books by Buddhist ministers? And then I'd open it, and it'd be a handwritten message to my grandfather from, I don't remember their names, unfortunately. And they would say, thank you for something, we'd like to give this to you as a gift. So my family said, if you don't take these books, these are going to be thrown away. So you should just take them if you want. And I think now, or my young adult years, I started to understand that perhaps before my grandpa passed, he was trying to lightly teach me Buddhism before he died. I wish that he had directly told me how Jodo Shinshu had helped him in his life, because maybe then I could have understood him better. But I also recognize now that back then I was a pretty angry person, and I don't know if I would have been in the right place to specifically hear something about Jodo Shinshu. I think all of us can appreciate the idea that sometimes things need to be explained to us. Sometimes we observe and learn by just seeing what's happening around us. I guess if Buddhism helped my grandpa, I would have wanted to know, this is like as an adult, Minister Landon, to know why he was telling me the things that he told me back then. This is where I have to give Koyama Sensei a little bit of cool people credit, because I'm gonna try to make fun of him a little bit more, but there's a hip hop artist named DMX, which I know you know who this is, but DMX passed during the pandemic due to a long period of time of drug use. He was very open about his anger in his lyrics, but he also talked in his lyrics about kind of reaching out for help. So this is a quote from DMX. I tried doing good, but good's not too good for me. So misunderstood why you chose the hood for me. Me, I'm all right, I just had to work hard at it. Went to grandmother for the answer, and she told me that God had it. So now here I am, confused and full of questions. Am I born to lose, or is this just a lesson? So of course, this is Christianity, right? DMX was not Buddhist. But as a youth who didn't really understand Buddhism, I related to this. I could feel the anger, the sadness, and I think looking back, my grandpa knew something, he was just trying to get me to go there. Perhaps my grandpa knew the quote or the saying, I can make bits of rubble change into gold. And my grandfather was lightly, very, very lightly, just kind of planting seeds of Buddhism. That's one way to approach Buddhism, Tao. Sometimes people do need to have it thrown at them, and that's the only time I will ever openly admit that I agree with something that Tao says on how we share the orthodoxy. But, you know, DMX was reflecting on how his grandmother, a person he was close to, asked him to go, pray to God, ask for help. And this did not end his anger, but I hope in the end he did find some peace while he was searching out his relationship with God. So don't we all need someone to kind of push us or urge us to go in the right direction? Because I think it's too easy for us to convince ourselves, well, we are perfect. I know I think I'm perfect a lot of the time. Tao. Do you have that thought too sometimes in your head? It's okay if you do, there's no judging in Jodo Shinshu. But wait, because we're the right person, all of you are the problem, right? Because that's just how life works. But jokes aside, I think if we can be guided by Shinran Shonin's lessons, we too could be transformed from rubble into gold. I liken it with self-reflection after getting angry at someone, and then feeling bad for the fact that I did what I did. I lament at the worry my grandfather had before passing, but that can't do anything about it. That happened in the past. But now, if just 1 out of 100 times I don't react in anger and I just keep my mouth shut, I think then that's a good reminder for me that something's bringing me closer to the Jodo Shinshu feel, and then I think it proves to me that this is working. I think it was like a couple of years ago, Reverend Blake and I came up so I could prep for the Kyoshi training and Reverend Blake could prep for his Tokudo training. And Koyama Sensei and his wife, Reverend Cindy, were helping us train. It was a long week. I was catching up on stuff that I was probably supposed to remember, but I'd forgotten. But we get home to the Bay Area and Reverend Blake says, I need to go to Japantown to pick up gifts for my family. Omiyage, if you've heard of that. So we go to a Japanese-American shop, and the staff recognized Reverend Blake and says hello. So immediately Reverend Blake takes out his phone and texts us, this person's family, oh my God, I'm with your, so-and-so. And unfortunately, they call Reverend Blake on the phone. So Blake is not older than me, he's a lot younger, but I have bad hearing. I don't know how he can hear anything, so he puts it on speaker on full volume. And my friend Reverend Blake is yelling into the speakerphone about how proud he is of this girl who can hear him as she's working the cash register. Then the family starts yelling, oh, she's working in Japantown and giving back to the community. Oh, and it means a lot for you, Blake, who's going into the ministry to acknowledge that she's grown so much. We're all so proud of her. It was very uncomfortable because there was like 30 people in line for the store. She was mortified. She was just taking orders and not looking anyone in the eye. And I was kind of standing there like, I should do something, but I don't feel comfortable either. So I'm like, not really sure what I should do. And then she looks up and looks at me like, can you do something about your friend? I wish that I could say I did the right thing, but I ran away. I couldn't do it. We get back to the car with our gifts, and I hear her from Blake say, I should not have done that. And I just looked at him like, was I acting like my parents and my grandparents? And I just lose it and start yelling about how it was uncomfortable. Everyone, I was uncomfortable, she was uncomfortable, and we both had a good laugh. And he said, next time, can you please stop me? I hate it when my family does that to me. So apparently, he needed someone to stop him from acting like his family, but at the end of the day, don't we kind of become our family? Like that's what we learn to see the world. So Should people stop us from being our families? I don't know. We had a good laugh and said, well, we're all foolish beings, and the power of Amita's vow is transforming us, showing us our true selves. We're kind of making fun of the religion, but I mean, also, we understand like what that actually means in our personal lives. The last night that I stayed here with Reverend Blake, I was staying at the hotel down the street. I have a cat allergy, and I was having, the kids are gone, right? They can't hear me. I was having a cigarette break. Koyama Sensei sometimes makes me need more of them. Not that I should take ownership on myself. So I have my earbuds in and I'm listening to music and I'm playing my Star Wars game and I'm not paying attention. I get mad at my wife for doing this in Oakland. Obviously, I need someone to tell me not to do the things that I tell my wife not to do. And I see hands moving in front of my face. So I drop my hand to get ready to, well, protect myself. And I take out my earbuds and there's this little Asian kid yelling for help. So I was a little suspicious. And I asked, hey, what are you doing? Because I'm like standing in an alley. Like, it's not the best place to be cornered by someone. I think I could have taken him, but that's not the point. So he tells me I got into a fight with my father. And he's, well, from this, I won't say what country, well, it doesn't matter, no one knows him. We're from Korea, he's very traditional, and he got upset with me, and I almost said something that I couldn't take back, so I turned and I ran out the door. And I've been walking around for 5 hours, and I don't know if I should go home. So we start talking, and like 2.5 hours later, I haven't packed my robes, I haven't packed my bags, we kind of get into it, and he said, you know, I'm 19, I'm supposed to be an adult, and I have a problem with smoking cigarettes, and I've been smoking marijuana, and my dad just came home, and somehow he found out. I don't know what happened. So I screamed at him. But he said, I realized I needed to leave, so I've just been walking around these streets all night. I was like, you know, it's not really safe to be walking around here right now. So we discussed shame and dishonoring family. And the idea of like maybe we should quit smoking, and so he doesn't know what my background is, but we just have a conversation. The emotional intelligence he showed, knowing that this 19-year-old kid was the problem, it just like blew my mind. And I told, you know, like I said, you know, you should stop and have some compassion for yourself, because I was your age once, and I was doing way worse things than this, and I never thought that I was the problem. I mean, for us now, it's because I went back to Temple, but I didn't want to tell that kid that. So I pointed out aspects of his story and showing him there were reasons because of his karma, his family, why he probably did what he had done, and yeah, he did need to take responsibility for his actions, but there was a lot of connections that he didn't make for himself. At the very end of our conversation, a person who may have been unhoused was stumbling around and yelling and punching things in the middle of the street. And the kid looked over and said, I don't want to be like him, but I know that I could be on that path. But I think, and I mean, I'm thinking like, yeah, like we should probably not be outside right now. But then the kid says, you know, I bet you that guy was a totally normal guy, but his life got too hard. And maybe just like me, I'll end up like that because I won't be able to get that help. So it's, who thinks about that kind of stuff as a 19-year-old kid? So this is like on 12:30 a.m. Thursday night, and it's going to like 2:30-ish in the morning, but like what are the chances of you running into someone with a background with like counseling and drug addiction and drug prevention, you know, and a Buddhist minister? We didn't talk about that stuff. Reverend Blake and Reverend Tadao the next day, because like, why are you so tired? So I told him the story, and Tadao was like, see, that's why you can't be outside because it's dangerous. Forgetting that, you know, we do live in Oakland, and then we did to go to school in the East Bay. But they said, it's so lucky for that kid that he met you because you've done this for work. And I just kind of said like, well, I didn't really do anything other than I just repeated what other people have taught me. But I think I shared what I would have needed back then, but at his age would not have been trying to listen. This might be heresy, we can see what Tadao says afterwards, but I think personally that God, because he was Christian, told this kid to come talk to me because God knew that I would talk to the kid. It didn't feel real. I even went to Pat and I was like, did this really just happen? Like, is this like real life right now? But I felt bad too, like I wasn't there at his age. So how did he get to that point? I hope that it's the Christian teachings. I hope he went to church. I hope he went to recovery. I don't know, but I know at his age I wouldn't have cared. I want to be clear. I do think God spoke to that child. I don't hear Amida like calling out to me, because that's how it works on Orthodox. So we say the Nembutsu, it's supposed to be in response to Amida saying it to us, calling to us first. I do admit that I feel something feeling right when I hear people telling me stories about their lives, or us sharing in aspects of our religion where we're having a conversation about how the teachings might be working for us, or how we've come to appreciate something. And I think for me that's enough to know that the teachings are working then. And I'd like to believe, I can't be sure, that this is the compassionate means of the Buddha, just sending me compassion and transforming me bit by bit. Shinran Shonin did all these hard Buddhist practices as a monk before coming to learn a new Buddhist approach. I think he highly suffered in the monastery because he knew deep down, he could at least admit to himself that he was not becoming that gold in the monastery, that he was supposed to be becoming on his own power. So he left and found a new approach to Buddhism. But then instead of keeping it for himself, he shared it with everyone that he knew also weren't allowed to practice Buddhism. I did not do good when not stopping Reverend Blake from embarrassing his family's friend, kid, maybe, and a hard maybe. I did something good by talking to this kid in the middle of the night. I share these because I think all of you in here have been on both sides of these experiences, and obviously different settings and relationships with other people. So whether or not we believe Amida Buddha is directly calling us, like we hear the voice, or we just got lucky enough to be around the right people to take the time to show us a different or better way to live our lives, I think we do need to continue to show up. So if we're open to it, we are down the path of transformation, and perhaps we'll start to feel more of how the rubble turns into gold. Then I think by doing this, we can live in some fashion just a little bit closer to Shinran Shonin, who again found a different Buddhist practice and did go teach all the people in Japan whose society had deemed just as rubble, not ever able to turn to gold. He knew that he could give them something that they could all benefit from, because then everyone is able to turn to gold. In closing, we do not have to earn this transformation, but when we appreciate and feel a spiritual transformation, what are we supposed to do? I think we should then try to pay the gift forward when appropriate, like our founder did. If you could, in closing, if you could please reflect on the Jodashichi teachings that we gained from Shinran Shonin as we celebrate his birthday, and could you please join me in Gasho? Bits of rubble turned to gold. Namo Domitsu. Thank you for your time today.